Hey, folks, good evening and welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Thanks for joining me. I want to welcome all new members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. Now, I'm going to start off with a brief account. In the early 1960s, in the Chicago suburb of Oak Lawn, a witness described seeing a leathery winged creature with a human face. A UFO was reported to have crashed in Lake Michigan soon after. Now, they state, I didn't see the creature. My mother did around 1960 in the Chicago suburb of Oak Lawn, Illinois. My aunt was present, but said she didn't see it. My dad and uncle were in the house with us kids and saw nothing. She described it as having leathery wings like a bat, but also having arms and a human face. She had watched it from a distance as it approached. She originally thought it was a huge bird. Standing on the railings of our porch to get a better look, and said it was almost close enough to touch. She said it flapped its wings slowly, gliding as much as flying. So within a few moments, there was a radio report about a UFO crashing into Lake Michigan. And both families jumped into our cars and went to the lake to see. It took a half hour or so to get to the lake, and police were on the scene by then shooing people away. I was in the first grade at the time. My parents were both practical people, not given to jumping at shadows or imagining things. Now I ask you, over the past 60 years or so, what are people observing, not only in Chicago, but throughout North America and the world? Are these beings indigenous, earthbound, extraterrestrial, at this point, simply an unexplained phenomenon? Well, let's get started and try to figure out some answers together.
In a reality of phantoms and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
So before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons, and by you sharing our program. Super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located in the chat below the chat box. The Buy Me a Coffee link is also shown below. Thanks for your consideration. Now, your comments are always welcome. Tell me what you found interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. And again, I want to thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, for their commitment to me and the channel. Now, if you're in the chat and have questions, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each and every one of them after my presentation. So the presence of winged humanoids is as old as human imagination. Still, after reading and listening to hundreds of eyewitness accounts over the past 4 decades, I've concluded that these beings are much more than fantasy. The Chicagoland winged humanoid sightings phenomenon is the largest since the Mothman encounters in the vicinity of Point Pleasant, West Virginia during 1966 through 67. Now, these sightings have become legendary, namely because the Mothman was seen as a harbinger of a catastrophe after the collapse of the Silver Bridge on the evening of December 15, 1967. Now, the bridge spanned the Ohio River between Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Ohio, and the disaster took the lives of 46 people. Now, the fact that most people started to refer to the Chicago sightings as a Mothman is understandable. As with all winged humanoid sightings and encounters before and after the Mothman of Point Pleasant events, there may be a chance that these variously described beings could be related to some way or another. Now, are these winged humanoids the progeny of the Mothman? I believe there is a connection, even though that information eludes us. Now, I've examined the witness accounts and the investigators' thought processes throughout this investigation. It's a work in progress, but we're still determined to find the truth. Now, I've assembled an interesting group of winged humanoids and Mothman reports that defy most rational explanations. Listen to the accounts and form your opinions. And most of these are very recent. Actually, the first one was the most recent that we have received, because on April 29th of 2024, a huge bat-winged humanoid was encountered by the witness. The same witness had 2 previous experiences with the same creature in 2023. And the 3 incidents were all within a 20-mile radius. Now, I received the following account after responding to a comment on the Phantoms and Monsters Radio YouTube channel. The witness states, "Hi there. First off, thank you for responding so quickly. It's been a rough day, and honestly, I don't know what to make of it. My name is Matt Sexton. I'm skeptical and usually think there's a logical explanation, but I cannot find one for my experiences. It started about a year ago on Route 30, Hinckley, Illinois, into DeKalb County. I can give you the exact location if you like, but it's all in the same, I'd say, 20-mile radius. And I will say DeKalb County is just west of Chicago. I drive a truck for a living, and you see some strange things on the road, but that night was something extraordinary. At around 1:30 a.m., a large branch fell from a tree and caught my attention. When I looked up, I saw it. It was huge humanoid covered in mouse brown fur. It had clawed feet and webbing between its legs, and bat-like wings with semi-separated arms from the wings, or maybe it was just close together. It had an elongated face. It swooped down in front of my truck and was gone. I thought, well, that could have been a crane or a large bird or anything other than what I saw. Now, the second time I saw it was a few miles away, about a month later, around the same time at night on Route 39. It looked the same, but now I could tell the height. When it flew across the road, its feet could reach the fog line on the right and the middle line, about 10 foot. So it's 10 feet tall at least. Again, I tried to justify it by any means necessary. Maybe it's just a bird that was closer than I thought. Maybe it was just a bag flowing across the road, literally anything but that. But again, the wings and the body were well defined. I let it go on thinking, nah, it couldn't be that. I'm missing something. It's just not that. So after what happened today, which was April 29, 2024, I can't ignore or deny something is going on. I'm a big boy, right? Like, I'm a father, husband, I'm 6'4" and weigh 300 pounds. I don't get scared easily. Well, I'm terrified. I'm honest to God shaken to the core. It's uncomfortable and I hate this. I do not want this to be real, but here goes. When I was going to work today on Bakura Road near Caneville, Illinois, there's a small bridge that goes across a creek. When my front tires crossed over, something either came from under the bridge or swooped from my right side and must have hit my bumper. I reacted and swerved to the oncoming lane and almost lost control of my vehicle. I got a very good look at it. It was the same thing I saw about a year earlier. I corrected, and before I could realize what was happening, it came down again over my hood from right to left, and I saw it in the air. It was literally the most horrifying thing I had ever seen in my life. It came down once more over on the roof of my car. At that point, I hit the gas and pulled my firearm. I got to about 110 miles an hour, and it was able to keep up, and over my hood one more time. Again, it was flying maybe 30 yards above me and to my left. I started firing because I was in fear for my life. The first time I truly felt so threatened that firing my weapon was the best option, which in all honesty, I'm not very proud of. I don't say this to embellish or to heighten theatrics. I say it to show how god-awful and horrible this was to me and how I felt. I had no recourse. I shot 12 rounds. And by the 7th or 8th, it wrapped itself in its wings and started descending. I followed it down with 4 more rounds and it was gone. I'm still shaking and distraught. I'm truly upset and it makes me feel weak, and scared. I don't care how you use this story. I'm perfectly willing to discuss what happened at any length you'd want, because I just can't deny that it was something I can't explain away. I desperately want to thank you for your quick response and for letting me share this with you. Now, he also sent some photographs of the truck. Now, they're pretty hard to see, and I didn't put them up here because I knew it would be just too hard to see. But there was a small indent on the roof and on the bumper, but he did pop that out on the bumper. Now, I did call Matt, and we went over his encounters in detail. The fact that he has seen this creature 3 times and that it caused damage to his truck and that he fired 12 pistol rounds at it makes this encounter quite unique. And the location of the last sighting encounter was in Pierce Township, Illinois, at Battle Creek, approximately 1,500 feet east of Hinckley Road. Now, I told him that I'd have Tobias talk to him. Tobias called him and talked to him as well. We tried to follow up with each other on our sightings and our encounter reports. And I have to say, unless somebody else shoots this thing or gets one, this is probably the most dramatic sighting that we have had so far. So it has been pretty slow over the past year or so, but we do know these things are still around now. So on this next account, an attendee at the NPMH Union Convention in Chicago, Illinois in August 2016 observes a winged humanoid from his hotel room in Millennium Park. Now, I received the following email on April 10th of this year. Now, he states, "Hi, Lon, I can't believe I found this. I was at a convention in Chicago in 2016. I saw the Chicago Mothman from my hotel window. I tried to take photos and still have them. I'm not a nut. I'm a union official for the United States Postal Service and was attending our convention. I would be glad to send you what I have. Please contact me. My name is Joe Palau, and I live in Brooklyn, New York." So again, we have another witness who's willing to give his name and come forward. So after I contacted Joe, I was told that he would go on the record by allowing me to publish his name and offer some personal information. And I truly appreciate Joe's willingness to give his testimony. Again, he talked to Tobias, and we both got statements from him. Now, after we talked, I wrote up the report. And as follows: the eyewitness, Joe Palau, an NPMH union shop steward, and actually a World Trade Center 9/11 survivor. And in fact, he was working at the post office annex at one of the towers. So he was there that day. He was attending the 2016 National Convention, which was scheduled to take place at the Fairmont Millennium Park Hotel in Chicago, Illinois, during the week of August 22nd, 2016. He was staying at the same hotel located at 200 North Columbus Drive. Now, during the first night of Joe's stay, which was August 21st, 2016, at around 10 p.m. Central Time, he received a telephone call from a hospital in New York City informing him that his mother was rushed to the emergency room. Now, he was told that he would be kept updated during the night, so he decided to stay awake. So very soon after he got off the phone with the hospital, He looked out his hotel room window, which was located on the east side of the building on the 8th floor. He observed a large black object at window level gliding over North Columbus Drive between east side of the hotel and the building across the street. His first thought was that it was a black garbage bag, though soon realized that the altitude of this object was much higher than a garbage bag would typically be seen. Then he imagined that it was an oversized kite or drone, but it was nighttime and that was probably not the correct identification. So as he continued to watch the object, it became apparent to Joe that this was clearly a dark-colored 6-foot-long humanoid with wide wings that was slowly gliding to the left of his room. He also observed that the winged humanoid seemed to be watching a window on the building across the street northeast of the hotel, which was the Radisson Blue Aqua Hotel. Now, he continued to watch the winged humanoid for several minutes as it continued gliding back and forth between the buildings. He also noted that he never saw any flapping of the wings, and that the winged humanoid continued to glide at different altitudes, constantly watching the building on the eastern side of the street. He also noted that the street and building were well lit, even at that altitude, and that the winged creature was fully visible, though he couldn't distinguish fine details, including the eyes or the makeup of the wing structure. Then suddenly, as the creature flew up by his window, heading south on North Columbus Drive, the winged humanoid just vanished. Joe remained vigilant, hoping to get another look at the winged entity, but he never saw it again. Now, for almost 7.5 years, he kept his encounter private until he recently heard me on a podcast interview describing the Chicago Mothman sightings in the Chicagoland region. He had never heard of the phenomenon until he heard the podcast, so he immediately contacted me. I conducted an extensive interview with Joe and found him to be quite articulate and forthright. He stated that he has never believed in the paranormal and cryptids, but that he is now convinced that this winged humanoid exists. He also stated that he believed that this was an interdimensional being with supernatural abilities by evidence of what he observed that night. So, I also received another encounter report about 2 months ago from a downtown Chicago security guard who started experiencing unexplained phenomena while making his rounds. He later observed an entity on a monitor and encountered a bizarre winged humanoid. So this is what he stated. Hello, sir. In the spring of 2021, I was working as a security guard employee in downtown Chicago, Illinois. On this specific night at around 1:30 a.m., I had completed my usual rounds and then settled into the monitor room to check the footage. After about an hour, I took a walk to start my next round. Sitting at night can get tiresome, and I needed to stretch my legs occasionally. I would start on the ground floor, then up the stairwells, checking all crucial points. I'd check the entrances and exits, check to see if all the offices were locked up, and then I would go back down to the ground floor. When I got back to the 3rd floor, the elevator stopped. When the doors opened, no one was there. I noticed that corridor lights were flickering, and it felt a little creepy when that happened. I got back into the elevator and went to the ground floor. When I reached the ground floor, and after the elevator door opened, I made my way to the security room to watch the monitors. Now, as soon as I sat down, I caught a fleeting glimpse of something unusual passing by one of the surveillance monitors that was situated outside the security room. I could have sworn that it had wings, but it went by too quickly. So I got up, opened the door, and peeked out of the room. My stomach started to churn. I could feel that something was aware of that while I was there. Don't ask me why. I just had that immediate sense of nervousness. I returned to the monitor room. I started to review the CCTV footage and pulled up the feed from the camera. As I watched, I saw the familiar scene of the empty hallway. Then I observed a hazy figure materialize on the screen. It resembled a human form, but its edges shimmered and blurred, making it seem dreamlike. The figure floated down the hallway. It cast no shadow and seemed entirely devoid of substance. I continued to monitor the ghostly figure as its movements became more erratic. Then, as it moved towards the front street door, it began to gain a more defined form. I immediately got to my feet and rushed to the door. I walked into the hallway and immediately moved towards the front. And as I turned the corner, I saw a 6 to 7 foot tall winged being that looked human-like. It was very thin and dark in color. The wings were almost transparent as the light from the street could be seen through it. The wings were huge, I'd say 15 foot in total width, and unfurled. I was in shock. I accidentally dropped my flashlight on the floor, and the being turned and looked in my direction. That is when I noticed its eyes illuminated with bright orange-red color. Then in a flash of blue light, it vanished. It was totally gone. I stood there for several minutes in total silence. I eventually walked back to the security room, but the rest of the shift was just a blur. I never mentioned the sighting to anyone, and I never wrote it in my report. Why? Because when I went back to watch the recording, there was nothing there. I know that I didn't erase it because there was no way that I could have done that. No mechanism would allow me to do so. Now, I live alone, so there's no one at home to relay my incident to. About 2 weeks later, I quit my security job after finding another line of work. So more recently, I was at a friend's home for dinner. He had other acquaintances there as well. As we sat in his living room after dinner, a discussion started about the Chicago Mothman sightings. I had never heard of the phenomenon, but I was intrigued by what I heard. That's when I decided to search online for the sightings, and that's how I found you. I don't know what I witnessed that night, but deep down I believe that it may be related. I'm hesitant to reveal the location of my sighting because I don't want any trouble from my ex-employer. At this point, I'm debating with myself how much information that I want to disclose. Now, I was able to contact and message the witness. There was no telephone communication, and the text was devoid of ID and just stated secured. He eventually told me where his sighting occurred, but insisted I not release the information. Now, all that I will disclose is that it occurred in a building located at the intersection of West Washington Street and North State Street. For now, the specific location and other information remain confidential and only known by the Phantoms and Monsters 4T research team. But this encounter suggests that these winged humanoids may very well be supernatural, an aspect of the investigation that the majority of our team believes to be true. So on this next account, a Wisconsin resident rents a camping spot near Lake Delavan to be alone and grieve his grandfather's passing. What occurs while he is there may be connected with the Chicago Mothman phenomenon. Now he states, my grandpa told me to watch the crows. That they're the guardians of the forest. He said that they'll tell you if a predator is out there. My grandpa was fascinated with them, and therefore I was too. Grandpa passed away in early autumn of 2002, and I took it hard. I didn't go to the funeral because I just knew I would be a mess, and I didn't want anybody to see me like that. He used to take me fishing when I was a kid to Lake Delavan in southeast Wisconsin. There was a campground just across from the lake. Now, after my grandpa passed, instead of dealing with it along with my family, I decided to rent myself a campsite and took off. It was strange being there without him, and I hadn't been to the lake since I was a kid. It seemed like I was the only person there, but that wasn't too surprising given the time of year. starting to get cold. So while the lake did have a few other visitors during the day, I had the campground all myself at night. Now, when I arrived, I noticed a group of crows hanging around the trees above me. Crows don't typically like people in the woods. I survived the first night, but I didn't get much sleep. I was feeling alone, so I ended up keeping a fire going throughout the night. The fishing was good, so good, in fact, that I kept a couple fish to feed the crows. I wasn't sure if they would take them since they didn't seem to trust me, but I thought they would make less noise if I did. They did feed on the fish that I left for them. Now, this went on for a few days. I fished all day, and I came back to the camp to make something to eat and feed the crows. Now, these crows had a habit of making noise at night. Then, on the fourth night, they woke me up again, but it was different. The sounds were different. There was a sense of urgency in their calls. I thought back to what my grandpa told me about the crows and the predators in the woods. I thought they were squawking at me, but suddenly I realized they might be alerting me to something else out there. I grabbed my flashlight and my knife and unzipped the tent. I was greeted by a pair of red eyes from up in the tree directly across from me. I could almost see the outline of the creature, but it didn't look right. It was just too big. Birds weren't that big. The crows were calling like crazy. I shined the light towards the creature, and I don't know how to explain it without sounding crazy. What I saw was a bird the size of a man. It had a dark-colored body and wings that were either black or brown, I couldn't tell. Its eyes were red and large. That much I know for certain. The red brightness from the eyes seemed supernatural, very weird. It appeared to have proportions of a man, like it was half man, half bird. The wings were huge and looked like they were those of a dragon. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy. I began to yell at it, and at the same time, the crows continued harassing it. Together with the crows, we drove the thing off, and let me tell you, when it took flight, the whole forest shook. The thing was huge. I got out of there the first light. It wasn't exactly the getaway I needed, but it was somehow comforting to have been helped out by the crows. I don't know what the thing wanted me to do, but it must have been out there every night the crows were squawking at me. All those times they were telling me that there was a predator out there. Sometimes I think that the spirit of my grandpa was there as well, using the crows to warn me about the winged creature. Now, this next account, a Greensburg, Indiana resident recalls a sighting of a bat-winged humanoid that was in a tree in his backyard. There was no sound, and he never saw it fly away. He states, "Hello, sir. This incident happened around 9 years ago, 2014, during the summer. Now, at that time, we lived in a small subdivision near Greensburg, Indiana, in Decatur County. My house was in the front of a small forest area, so the backyard is a large clearing with lots of trees behind it, which is bordered by a fence my father built. In the backyard, there is also a greenhouse and a shed. Behind the trees is a small trailer home park. I remember going outside on a cloudy day to get my dog since he was outside. He was outside for way longer than usual, so I got worried and went to take a look. As I went down the balcony steps to go into the backyard, my dog instantly ran towards the trees and started to bark. I looked up at the trees and saw a purplish colored humanoid figure, about 6 foot tall with wings. The creature most likely saw me, and it climbed through the trees and bushes and attempted to fly up, but it couldn't since the trees were so thick. I ran up the stairs to the balcony and watched my dog continue to bark. The creature had disappeared, so I was worried about where it had gone. I'm not sure what happened after this, as my memory is quite foggy of the incident, but I'm guessing that I ran inside and hid. I have no idea what it was, but I was intrigued by the winged humanoid sightings in the Chicago area and thought I'd write you. The shade of this being was distinctively purple in color, and the membrane wings were bat-shaped. The head was large compared to the body, but that was the extent of any details that I could see. It never made any sounds, and I didn't see the wings fully unfurled. Now, a more recent sighting back in September last year of the winged humanoid in Camp Pine Woods near the Plains River. The location is just northeast of the O'Hare International Airport. The witness states, I was driving Thursday night at 10 p.m., which was September 7th, 2023, on my way to pick up food in the Glenview area. Prior to picking up my food, I had a super uneasy feeling. I felt very brain foggy and just out of it. I really wasn't focused. I want to think it's stress because of working 9 to 5. So as I was driving on Westlake Avenue, I was listening to music and singing along with my favorite playlist. I wasn't really thinking much. I drove by the cemetery earlier on River Road, which I hate driving by. I started obviously feeling spooked, like out of nowhere. I don't know why I was psyching myself out, but I continued to not pay mind to what I was feeling and kept singing along with the music. It was Lady Gaga, so I was singing my heart out. So I kept driving. And as I drove by the forest on Westlake Avenue, I quickly saw a strange creature standing still on the right side of the road. Now, I wanted to believe it was a deer, but this thing I saw was 6 to 7 foot tall, standing upright, and deer don't do that. It had a dark gray cement-like colored body, and its eyes gave out the same red as bicycle reflectors do. That's what made me look. When I quickly locked my eyes with my stomach dropped, and I got scared. The same feeling you get when riding a roller coaster. I freaked out a bit and was thinking, keep driving, don't look back, don't look back. I quickly sped up to the upcoming light and intersection. I wanted to be around other cars in the intersection and more into the business and buildings. I kept telling myself, nope, that was a deer. That was a deer. You didn't see anything. So I picked up my bonchon chicken and drove on the highway back home instead. I forgot about it and went to work the next day. I kept thinking about it, so I told my coworker what happened and what I saw. She's into the paranormal and conspiracy and told me about the Mothman seen all over Chicago, especially around O'Hare Airport area. So throughout my research, I saw the Google Maps sighting site that you had and had to reach out. Again, I never thought I would be doing this, but hey, here I am. Whatever these things are, I hope they're nice. So again, I talked to the witness and referred her to Tobias, and he talked to her, who also followed up with her. Very forthcoming, very descriptive. She had never heard of the sightings before her encounter, and when talking to her, you could tell that it really affected her. And of course, the description is very similar to the previous sightings, though the wings were not unfurled at the time. So I'm going to talk about a few other sightings I've received beyond Chicago. A Navajo Nation resident is driving home late at night on the highway. He has a companion with him. They see a man sitting on the guardrail up ahead. Then they are shocked when they get closer. He states, I live in the Navajo Nation, New Mexico. It was about 2 a.m. and I was driving home with a friend of mine. There was very little traffic on the highway. Up ahead on the side of the road, I see what looks like a man sitting on a guardrail. I got a horrible feeling in my gut. I had the feeling this guy was going to do something bad. I honestly felt as though he was going to jump in front of our truck or to commit suicide or something. As we get closer, he stands up. I moved into the next lane. As we get closer, he starts walking into the road. I start panicking. There was no time to slow down, and I couldn't swerve to avoid him for fear of rolling my truck. My friend and I started screaming. Just as we were about to hit what I thought was a man, jumps and his wings and jumps over the entire truck. He was only visible for a second, but I can still remember it clearly as day. It had the body of a man from the head to the waist, but from the waist down was hairy. The wings were also dark. The feet were the worst. Instead of a human feet, they were these horrible talons, like that of a chicken, but also dark and hairy. The best comparison I can make is that it looked like a human-sized gargoyle. It was the most horrifying thing I'd ever seen. If my friend hadn't seen it as well, I would thought I was going crazy. On a side note, in the years since that night, I've met one other person who has seen the same, if not extremely smaller creature. Now, another reader reported a possible Mothman sighting near a location where I received a similar sighting in 2011. Now, she observes a large winged being in a tree with binoculars for approximately 15 minutes. She states, "Hi, Lon. I live in Liberty Township, Butler County, Ohio, about 6 or 7 road miles southeast of New Miami, and about the same distance from Middletown, which is more directly north of me. Butler County is the second county north of the Ohio River, and the Great Miami River curls up from the Ohio River through Hamilton and Dayton. I'm about 28 miles north of the Ohio River, and I'm in the catchment area for Mill Creek, which is more eastern, running through Cincinnati into the Ohio. I was surprised to see reports so close to home, which recalled an incident 3 or 4 years ago. It was an overcast afternoon in early spring, and I was upstairs preparing to do some cleaning. I looked out the window and saw something had just landed in one of the large trees across the street, perhaps as much as 500 feet from my upstairs window. If it had been downstairs, I might not have noticed it. The larger branches, which have since been removed, swayed under the object's weight. It was close enough that I could see it, but not close enough to offer any real details. What had landed was a huge brown winged creature, I suppose, perched into the tree. I ran for my binoculars, which I couldn't find, and I asked my husband to come and see. We watched for 15 minutes, and the thing did not move for most of the time. It was very sizable, as it looked huge sitting in the tree. I thought at the time of the Mothman, but that seemed just quite far-fetched until I read a post earlier in April. I was not going to report to you, but it seems to confirm the other reports, although perhaps not the same year. This area is rapidly developing, and what were farmers' fields and treed vistas are being bulldozed. I know it has affected much of the wildlife around. It's probably been 5 years since I've seen the deer that used to roam around. Fewer turtles, opossum, raccoons. So this might have been a refugee who had been since displaced, as I had no proof of anything. So a Virginia man recalls his harrowing and scary Mothman sighting encounter while his mother was driving in the mountains near Harrisonburg, Virginia. They both got a great look at this creature. And I received this not long ago. He states, this happened about 15 years ago, and I still remember every detail. My mom, my friend, and I were driving home from a concert late one night, probably around 1 a.m., and we were driving through some mountains. It was near Harrisonburg, Virginia. The roads were seriously windy. It was so dark that we could only see a couple of feet ahead of you, thanks to the headlights of the car. Now, my friend was asleep in the back seat, and she luckily didn't witness any of this. I, on the other hand, was sitting in the front seat trying to help my mom stay awake. Everything was going as expected, just normal driving, when literally out of nowhere, this huge, when I say huge, I mean it was probably around 6 foot tall thing flew directly in front of our car. Somehow I was able to really see a lot of this thing, even though the whole ordeal only lasted about 5 to 10 seconds. But this creature was, like I said, about 6 foot long. I only say this because it was longer than the front of our car. and had these big black or dark gray wings that were kind of moth-like, and they were against the side of it, kind of like you when you put both your arms down to your side. And it was flying sideways, and it was right in front of our headlights. So that means it was only a few feet off the ground. It was flying so fast, it probably should have hit it, considering we were going 55 to 60 mile an hour, but somehow we didn't. And the creepiest, most disturbing thing, or part about it, was that the body looked so human-like. It was just this gray, white, bald head. My mom and I both saw the exact same thing, and thank goodness she did, because I'd feel even crazier if she didn't. We kept trying to explain it away. Maybe it was a bat or an owl. But I've never seen a bat or an owl that big. There's just no way. I did some research, and years ago in the 1960s, there were so many sightings of the Mothman creature in or around West Virginia. I guess he's back, or maybe he never left. I've told so many people about this, and some, I think, believe me, and then others just give me that skeptical look like, yeah, okay, that kind of look. I know what I saw, and thank God my mom saw it too. I'm still freaked out about this encounter, and it was so many years ago. I still live in Virginia near Richmond. Now, I have had several sightings of these winged humanoids literally flying in front of cars sideways with no wings out, with its wings on its side, just like a missile going by. Another reason why we think these things are supernatural, they have the ability to fly without using the wings. The one I saw back in 1988 did the same thing. It literally shot up in the air without the wings being unfurled. Well, anyway, this is the last account, so if you have questions, start posting them, please. A man, his girlfriend, and her son were moving to another state. They stopped in a Roanoke, Virginia area parking lot to rest. That is when they encountered a creature that deeply disturbed them. He states, "This did not happen to me, but to a friend of mine." Well, I can't say with 100% certainty that it was a Mothman. I do honestly believe that he saw something out of the ordinary. Now, when this came up, he knew nothing about the legend of the Mothman. It wasn't until later when the Mothman Prophecies movie came out that he decided to investigate it and noticed all the similarities. But what happened to him was he and his girlfriend and her son were moving from one state to another. I remember that was a few weeks after 9/11. They were in the Roanoke, Virginia area at the time of the encounter. At night, they pulled over in a parking lot to sleep. They had two vehicles with them. One was driving the car and the other was following with the U-Haul. At one point, he got out of the car and went to the U-Haul to get something out of the back. That's when he heard his girlfriend screaming. There was a tall, dark figure hovering over the car where she and her son were inside, and it seemed to be looking into the window and poking or scratching at the glass. Now, when my friend shined a flashlight on it, he said that he saw squinting red eyes and it was gone with a flash. It ended up landing on a tall branch in the tree line. It was looking back at them with round, red, glowing eyes. Now, he watched it for a minute, then he said it darted straight up into the sky and took off. It never flapped its wings. It just took off like a rocket, faster than any living thing on Earth. Now, he was incredibly shaken by the encounter. And so was his girlfriend. He said that the relationship was never the same after this and that she changed. I had a deep interest in Mothman, that I kept pressing him for details, but he just couldn't really tell me. And every time he did, he had to stop because it upset him. So, folks, you got any questions? Let's get to them. I do want to mention, I want to thank Win Nice for their $20 donation. And I want to thank Shorter to Cook for their $5 donation as well. Thank you very much. So let's see what we got here. And I was saying I was hoping that these Mothman encounters would start picking up again around Chicago. So of course it has. So Short Order Cook states and asks, did the first say if he thought he had shot the creature? He's told me that he is sure that he hit it. But he never saw any blood. He never saw it react to it. All it did was put its wings around itself like it was shielding it from the bullets. Now, I think he told me it was a 44 Magnum. That's what it was. Well, that's quite a gun. I mean, he was pretty close to it. So I don't know. You know, we hear about that a lot. We even hear with Bigfoot, where people have shot this thing and it kind of looks like it hits them. And they see flashes of light, like it goes right through them. So I don't know what the deal is with the winged humanoids, but that's the first time I've heard of any of these beings being shot at. And you figure in Chicago, even in some of the neighborhoods, that there'd be some gunfire at one of these things, but we haven't heard of that in any of the sighting reports. So Jose Sanchez, when people often describe the Mothman's eyes as red reflectors, could it be similar to the eye shine on cats and other nocturnal animals? Well, let me tell you from experience. The creature I saw projected light. It wasn't reflective light. It wasn't like a cat or dogs or another woodland creature. It reflected light, almost like taillights on a car. And I've heard that same description from other witnesses as well. So it seems to be a supernatural part of this being where it can actually, project light from its eyes. The Dachshund Master, any of these things ever seen in Kentucky? Oh, God, I don't know. I'd have to look. I would think I've had a sighting or two in Kentucky somewhere. I just can't remember all of them. I don't get many Mothman or winged humanoid sightings in Kentucky that I can remember. Most of the sightings I get in Kentucky are Bigfoot and Dogman or upright canines. Dagnabbit, any connection with Mothman and the Men in Black? Not really. I mean, the only kind of small connection would be, of course, with the Mothman being seen around Point Pleasant, and that time the Men in Black being seen after the bridge collapse. Now, I think the Men in Black were there because of all the UFO activity. I don't think it had anything to do with the Mothman, but who knows? But any other instances, no, I don't see any connection. Rob N., how many people have reported encounters with similar creatures while in Iraq? My younger brother died of suicide post-Iraq, however. He was fine 99% of the time. And he's seen the Mothman movie? Is that what he's trying to tell me? I don't know. There have been a few weird things seen in Iraq and Afghanistan, but I can't really tell if it's anything related to winged humanoids. It's a lot of different creatures. I mean, you know, they got like the Kandahar giant and a few other things related to that. Large creatures, cryptid canines, ghouls, almost like the white, pale humanoid type things. But as far as winged humanoids, I just not recalling any of that. Dagnabbit, can Mothman and the Jersey Devil be the same cryptid? I guess it could be, though. You know, I kind of dispute the whole New Jersey Devil thing. I don't know what people are really seeing. Is it related? Could it be related to the Mothman? Sure. I mean, if that's what it is, but I don't know what people are seeing. The descriptions of those things have varied so many different times. Now, there have been some very credible witnesses, including a lot of police officers, but I just don't know what they are and if there's any connection to them. Jose Sanchez said then the eyes have bioluminescence. Well, I guess so. If you mean, maybe it's bioluminescence, but it's more bright. Seems to be a light projecting from it. Bioluminescence is more of a, I don't know, a stationary light as opposed to projecting light. I don't know. Could be. Anything else, folks? Well, I do want to state that there will be a members-only chat this coming Wednesday, June 5th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I plan to have live members-only session, and I do a monthly basis if I can. If you want to sign up to be a member, it's only $2.99 a month, and it includes the members-only live chats, exclusive member-only videos, which I'm going to be making more of, and priority replies to comments. So if you put a comment in the on the website or on the channel, I will answer completely and will recognize it. So you will see that. So if you have perk suggestions, hey, let me know about it. Let's see, we got one more question here. Jose Sanchez, have the Mothman crawlers been seen in the same area? No, not necessarily. No, I can't put any connection to them, to these phenomena together. So anyway, I want to thank each and all of you for watching and chatting. If you did donate, it's truly appreciated. Your support makes all this possible. So please like, subscribe, and share. As well, if you do have a sighting report, please contact me at launchcircularphantomsandmonsters.com. So don't forget, if you are a member, or you sign up to be a member, Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, I will do a chat. We'll come in here and we talk about anything you want to talk about. So we can go from there. So until then, have a great weekend. We'll see if we have a show next Friday. I'm quite sure I will. So you take care, and I will talk to you all soon.